Hey, this is Dino, and I want to show you an Apigee API Proxy that I built that provides a SAML IdP interface on top of Google Cloud Identity, also known as Firebase Auth. Why did I do this? The Integrated Developer Portal with Apigee supports a SAML sign-in. Some people want to use Google Cloud Identity to allow that sign-in, but Google Cloud Identity itself does not expose a SAML IdP interface. You can federate a SAML identity provider into Google Cloud Identity. In effect, the SAML identity provider becomes the back end to Google Cloud Identity. That's not what's necessary here. In the case of the Integrated Developer Portal that comes with Apigee, it needs to connect directly to a SAML identity provider. And if you want to use Google Cloud Identity, there's a mismatch there. So what I did was I produced an API proxy that supports the /login and /logout endpoints provided by a SAML identity provider. And then I wired that up to use the Google Cloud Identity Firebase Auth as the back end, which means you can sign into the Integrated Developer Portal with Google Cloud Identity. Okay, that's a lot of explanation. Let's see it work. Here I'm in the portal administrative pages, and I can show you that I've set up a SAML identity provider. So the sign-in URL is just the API proxy that I produced with the /login path suffix, and I'll show you that proxy a little bit later. I've established an IdP entity ID that happens to be the same as the API proxy endpoint and the base path. And then I created a key and certificate, self-signed certificate, and uploaded that into the SAML configuration pages for Integrated Developer Portal. So that's all standard stuff for SAML in the Developer Portal. At that point, it gives me the ability to log in. Let's see it. Before we see it work, let me go to the administrative panel and start a debug session. So before I show you exactly what that API proxy is doing, we're going to start a debug session. And then I'm just going to kick this off in an incognito window that's going to require me to sign in. So there's no cookies here. If I click the sign in button, because I've configured SAML, that's enabled. And what you can see is it's now bringing me to a sign-in page that is delivered by that API proxy, that sign-in API proxy. That IdP, that SAML sign-in API proxy. I do need to click the button the first time. At that point, I can actually sign in. I'll key in my password. Yes, it's a long password. I actually have two-factor auth set on this account, so let me touch my key, and I am signed in. At that point, you can see I've got an identity, so which is sort of magic. I signed in with Firebase Auth or Google Cloud Identity. All right, let's close this out. Now I want to show you another experience, and that is, well, before I do that, let's look at the trace. So opening up the debug window, you see the initial request that came in was to the /login path in this API proxy, and that's issued by the developer portal. Along with that comes in an encoded SAML request, and on the right you can see that. encoded. This is just base 64 encoded, so you can't make much sense of that. We need to decode that, and what you get out of that is an XML document, which is the SAML protocol. It's an authn request, an authentication request. Please authenticate the user. And SAML specifies a bunch of the information that a requester needs to provide, including the callback URL for when the authentication succeeds, the issue instant, when this request was made, and also a signature, so that the IDP can verify that it is from a trusted party. So we verify the signature on the authn request inside this API proxy, the digital signature. And once that's done, we can extract information that's meaningful or relevant, useful, out of that authn request document. And what the proxy does then is it populates some of that information into a session blob that the proxy then inserts into cache. So it creates a session ID and then stores a session blob into the cache with that session ID, and then redirects the user to the sign-in page. What is the sign-in page? Sign-in page is just this location, which is what we initially saw. Please sign in. All right, so that's the result of /login. Now, that sign-in page gets satisfied from the API proxy. And what it's going to do is just kick off the sign-in by delivering a small web page, which looks like this. This is just some HTML. It's got a single button. This is the thing that you saw. And behind that button is some JavaScript, which which relies on the Firebase Auth SDK. So you'll be able to see that here in this payload. This is getting sent from the API proxy back to the requester, which in this case is a browser. And this is just JavaScript code that's going to run in the context of the browser to allow the sign-in. Once that's done, once the sign-in completes, which you saw with the module, the modal dialog, that sign-in experience calls a get back on the API proxy, passing the ID token and the session ID. So what the API proxy does then is it retrieves the session and validates it, gets it right out of cache, and then validates the ID token, which is the standard ID token that Google Cloud Identity produces for anyone who logs in. So this is just a JWT. We can verify that, and then once it's verified, we can trust all the data there. From those two pieces of information, that is the session, which came from the initial request for authentication, and the ID token, we can then the API proxy can then form a response, a SAML response to the authentication request. And we kick that off by producing this SAML response, filling it with the appropriate information from the session and from the ID token. The things from the ID token would be all the information about the authenticated user. Then sign that SAML assertion with generate SAML assertion policy, with the generate SAML assertion policy. Then encode it. It needs to be encoded base 64. And then how does it get back to, so this is the response to the Integrated Developer Portal. How does it get back? How does that response get back to the Integrated Developer Portal? Well, it's required that that be sent as a post to the Integrated Developer Portal's login endpoint. So what the proxy does is, again, it renders an HTML form with that encoded SAML assertion embedded in it. And that form, that HTML form, auto-submits. So that's the experience you saw. It auto-submits and it goes right back to the developer portal, which then receives the response, the SAML response, and then treats the user as authenticated. All right, so a bunch of different steps, but all according to the SAML protocol on the front end, and just kind of using the web form, simple web form for sign-in on to connect to the Google Cloud Identity. So I showed you what it looked like in an anonymous window. What if I open this in the sign-in page in a new tab? You can see I'm already signed in. Let me sign out. That's the single sign-in experience. If I try this again, let me sign in and click login with SAML. You can see it's just instant. I'm immediately signed in. There is one glitch where the tab here is not updated, but once I click it again, it's updated. I'm not really sure why that's happening, but regardless, the point is, because I'm already authenticated in this browser window, I didn't need to re-authenticate with my password and my two-factor auth and so on. Google Sign-In just lets me automatically sign in, so I get that nice, efficient single sign-on experience with the developer portal when I connect it this way. All right. I hope this has been informative. That's all I got. Let me know if you've got questions. Till next time, keep it digital.